Welcome to this second part of the module. In this second part, you will learn how to conduct the steps of a waste audit. These are divided into three blocks: measure generation rate, conduct waste characterization study, and finalize the waste audit. We will use the example of a fictitious city called Iria. Let's start by measuring the waste generation rate. The very first thing you need to do is to collect the waste. All waste generated in the selected households needs to be collected every day for a minimum of 8 consecutive days. On day 1, provide the selected households with plastic bags and ask them to accumulate all the generated waste they have at home in these bags. The waste collected in day 1 will be discarded, as it may contain waste accumulated from 2 or more days. On all the other days, from day number 2 to 8, collect the bags filled with waste from the previous day and provide a new bag for the next day. Note the following information on each bag: number of people in the household, income level, date, and time. Every day, bring the collected bags to the measurement site for analysis. Use a convenient vehicle for transport. Once all the waste from all households collected on one day is brought to the site, weight each sample bag and record the weights in the data spreadsheet. Let's look at an example together. Imagine we are measuring the waste of 5 households in Iria. In reality, you need to measure many more households to arrive at statistically significant results, but here, for simplification, we'll limit ourselves to 5. On the first day, we compiled how many people live in each household, so we write it down. On day 2, we record how much waste we've collected from each household. Remember that the waste from day 1 was discarded. Day after day, we repeat this procedure until the table is filled. Once all information is compiled, you can calculate the average per capita generation rate as follows. Assume this is the information we have for the case of Iria. Sum up the total collected wastes per day. You could also sum the total waste generated per household during the audit. Both totals should yield the same. Sum up the number of people living in each house whose waste was collected each day. If we sum all members living in the households of the audit, we get 17. However, on day 4, waste was not collected from one household. Therefore, we should recalculate the number of people participating in the audit on day 4. In this case, 11. Then, calculate the waste generation per capita for each day by dividing the generated amounts by the number of people. Finally, calculate the average waste generation per capita. We see that for the case of Iria, it amounts to 0.42 kilograms per capita per day. If you had different categories, say income levels, you should fill such a sheet for each income level. Once we know the average per capita calculation rate, it is very simple to calculate the total domestic waste generated in your city. You just need to multiply the average rate by the total number of people living in the studied city. In the case of Iria, with 50,000 inhabitants, we see this would amount to 20,971 kilograms per day, or, rounding it up, to 21 tons per day. Other characteristics may also be needed, such as waste density, moisture content, and calorific value. The calculation method for calorific value and moisture content are covered on other modules in the course. Let's briefly now explain how to calculate the density. You can also calculate the density every day and calculate the weekly average later on. The steps to follow are: first, randomly select around 20 bags of the collected waste bags. Make sure you have recorded the weight of these bags in advance. One by one, open them and empty their contents into a bucket of known volume until this is full. When filling the bucket, slightly compress the waste, but don't compress it too much, otherwise you will increase considerably its density. Once the bucket is full, empty it and repeat the same process until all the bags have been emptied. Count how many buckets you've filled. Let's see an example. Assume we have 20 bags of waste and this bucket of 100 liters. We fill it 5 times with the waste from these 20 bags. That means that the waste has a volume of 500 liters, or 0.5 cubic meters. We have previously weighted the bags, which amount to 125 kilograms. The density will then be calculated, dividing the amount by the volume. This will yield 250 kilograms per cubic meter. After measuring amounts, it is time to measure what the waste is composed of. We refer to this as characterization study. It is advisable to limit the time between collection and analysis to a maximum of 8 hours, since the waste will start slowly to degrade. Let's now go through the steps required for such a study. The very first thing you need to do is to empty all the bags collected on the same day onto a flattened and covered surface. Ideally, this could be a plastic sheet. If your waste amounts to more than 150-200 kilograms, you will have to take a representative sample of around 50 kilograms for analysis. The most commonly used technique for this is called the quartering technique. You will do this by, first, mixing all the waste as thoroughly as possible. You can use your shovels for this. Then, expand the waste on a flat, hard surface so that it forms a flat layer. Then, divide the waste layer into 4 parts: A, B, C, and D. From those 4 portions, discard 2 opposing quarters, say B and D. And then, combine the remaining 2 quarters. Repeat these 4 steps until approximately 50 kilograms of waste are left. Now you have a manageable amount of waste for sorting. Bring the representative sample of 50 kilograms to the sorting table. Prepare the labeled containers, as many containers as fractions you have, and put them around the sorting table. Sort all the waste until the largest item you have left is around 1 centimeter. The pieces that are smaller than 1 centimeter are called fines. Sorting them out would take a long time, so it is preferable to work with a smaller representative sample. Say there are 10 kilograms of fines. You could then reduce this to 1 kilogram using the same quartering technique as explained before. Once you have calculated the amounts of each fraction, you need to multiply it by 10 to account for the 10 kilograms of fines in the total sample. Once everything is sorted out, the next step is to weigh each fraction and record it on the spreadsheets. Add the amounts of fines to the total amount. Remember to subtract the weight of the empty container from your results. Repeat this procedure every day and complete your spreadsheet. Imagine now these are the results we got in IDEA. Once all the information is compiled, you can calculate the percentage of each fraction over the total amount as follows. You first sum up the amounts of each waste fraction collected during the week. Then calculate the total amount. Ideally, it should be close to the total weight calculated before. You must then divide the amount of each fraction by the total amount and multiply it by 100. That will give you the proportion of each waste fraction over the total amount. And this is what we refer to as characterization of waste. You can then represent this data in a pie chart like this one. If you wish, you could also calculate the characterization of the waste every day and later on calculate the average for the week. Like this, you could compare if there are any significant changes in the waste characterization within the week. The very last 2 steps consist of disposing of the waste adequately. If no formalized waste collection and/or treatment system is in place, you could consider offering it to informal recyclers for recovery. And cleaning and sorting all the equipment. And that's it. In this module, we went through the steps of a waste generation and characterization study, or waste audit. We first saw how to collect the waste, weight it, and how to calculate the per capita average generation rates as well as the total CT generation rate. We then looked at how to calculate the density of the waste and finally how to conduct a characterization study. For those of you willing to get more insights into the topic, please check the following literature. Of particular interest is the UNEP document, where you will find tips on how to conduct audits for other types of waste, such as industrial or construction and demolition waste audits. Thank you for listening.